Well, church, this morning I would like to talk to you about trials. Trials. And I specifically want to talk to you about trials within the Christian life and how a Christian ought to respond to trials. And we'll do so by looking at the letter of James. It's the first installment, if you will, of a start of our new series. Won't be consecutively, but it will stretch over the course of the next few weeks or months. So we'll look at this letter, James. It's a short letter. If you flick through it, you'll see that it only consists of about 5 chapters. And you can actually do it in one sitting. You can read through the entire letter, and it will only take you about 15 minutes. And I'd actually encourage you to do so. But not this morning, not now, because we need to pay attention. But it's a short letter. But although it's short, it does pack a punch. And the punch is actually felt from the first verse. So why don't you have a look with me? Verse 1, it says, James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations. Well, this James that's writing over here, we shouldn't confuse this James with the brother of John, the son of Zebedee, who according to Acts 12 was beheaded by Herod Agrippa I. In fact, this James shouldn't be confused with many other Jameses within the New Testament, men that has gone by this name, James. Now, this James that we are reading of here today is none other than the brother of our Lord Jesus Christ. This brother, James, who during Jesus' earthly ministry back in John chapter 7, actually did not believe in Jesus. The brother who, during Jesus' earthly ministry, did not really ascribe to Jesus' ways of doing ministry. In fact, James had a rather worldly view of Jesus. And you don't have to turn there, but let me read what John chapter 7, verse 3 to 5 says. This is James and his brothers speaking to Jesus. It says, Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave Galilee and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world, Jesus." For even his own brothers did not believe in him. I'll talk about a vote of no confidence, right? As you read those words, it's as if James and his other brothers are saying, Jesus, when it comes to your marketing strategy, when you do ministry, it seems a little bit flawed. We can see that you want to be some sort of public figure, but you keep on doing this private ministry thing with only a small group of people. For James, then, what Jesus needed was to get a big crowd, get a big stage, be in front of them, and perform to them. Show yourself to the world. Well, there back in John chapter 7, we see a James that was steeped in worldly thinking and in unbelief. But as we fast forward to this letter of today, we see quite a different man. This James actually introduces himself as no longer enslaved to the ways of the world. Instead, we now see a man who identifies himself as a slave of Christ. That's what servant means in this context. You are a slave of Jesus. You have faith in Jesus. You are sold out to Jesus. You are a Christian. But notice also who James is writing to. Have a look at verse 1. At verse 1, it continues to say, to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations. Well, this language of 12 tribes, it's interesting because it actually originates from the Old Testament, as you would know. And you might recall that the 12 tribes of Israel were scattered among the nations by the Assyrians in the north and by the Babylonians in the south. And there, these tribes, they were exiles among a people who did not know God. And what James is doing when he refers to his audience as the 12 tribes scattered among the nations, what it does is to draw a comparison between the Old Testament people of God and the Christians to whom he is now writing to. James is saying that just like God's people in the Old Testament were scattered in the world, away from their homes and their land, among a people who did not know God, so now these Christians are scattered because of their faith in Jesus. And they now need to make sense of their faith in Jesus as they live in places that's not called home, among a people who do not know God. And surely to those around them, these Christians were probably seen as outsiders. And I think all of us are acquainted with what it means to be an outsider, or how at least it feels like to be an outsider. Whether you are that person at the work who always gets overlooked for that promotion, or whether you are a brother or a sister from a different country or different province, we know that oftentimes there is this pressure upon an outsider to conform. And that pressure sometimes leads you to do things in a way that everyone else does. You sort of just go with the flow. But James says that don't go with the flow. In this letter, he's telling and urging Christians, both then as well as now, to be steadfast. We'll see James telling Christians both then as well as now to make sense of their faith in Jesus, as they live among a people who do not know God, as they live in places that is not called home. And home for the Christian is not this world, it's heaven. And so this letter might actually reveal to us how much you or I have rather recklessly or obliviously conformed to the ways of this world that is not our home. To put it in James's own words, later in chapter 4, verse 4, he says, Do you not know that friendship with the world is hostility toward God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world sets himself up as an enemy of God. Friends, as we go through this letter, we'll see James continually urging us to make sense of our faith. To make sense of our faith here in this church, to make sense of our faith in Brackenfell, to make sense of our faith in Belleville or in Durbanville, in Kraaifontein, in Kuilsriver, to make sense of our faith in our various workplaces that we are in, and also to make sense of our faith within our homes. James says that as we work through this letter, we'll eventually start to see and get an idea whether our lives look more like it belongs to Jesus or if it looks more like it belongs to this world. And James says this life, it has various ways of testing that faith of us. And the first test of our faith James gives is what we look at this morning, the test of our right response to trials. You know, I recently saw a show aired on TV, and the show was sort of a mix between two other shows that you may have heard of, Survivor and Fear Factor. It's also a reality TV show. But this show is specifically centered around celebrities. And these celebrities are sent off to a remote place where they are to complete various trials. And if they complete the trial successfully, they get a reward, such as food, because they're out in the middle of nowhere. But at any point that they feel the trial that they are doing or going through is getting too much for them, then all they need to do is say the following words: I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Now, I don't know about you, but at times when I go through trials, those words resemble my words. How about you? Sure, you might not say I'm a celebrity, but we might say, I'm a Christian. get me out of here. We might say, I'm a child of God. It can't possibly be true that I need to go through this trial, that I need to endure this trial. Well, is that the Christian response to trial in our lives? Well, surprisingly, James says no. In fact, he says that exactly because of who you are, saved by God, a child of God, a Christian, because of who you are, you will not be exempt from trials. Rather, you should expect trials. Notice in verse 2, he says, whenever you face trials of many kinds or various kinds. And the idea that James is conveying behind those words is that of something happening from outside of a person. And it is an individual that is describing in terms of falling into something unexpectedly. And as you fall into that thing, you are engulfed by it. You are surrounded by it. That's the idea when he says you face trials of various kinds. It's like one of those video clips where people are caught on camera accidentally walking into a swimming pool and being engulfed by water. Or someone walking straight into that sliding door, being engulfed by pain. That's the idea of what James is trying to get across. And those sorts of things, you don't diarize. It just happens to you. And as a Christian, we don't need to go out looking for trials, James says. No, he says they'll find you. They happen unexpectedly. They happen whenever, as verse 2 says. They happen when the landlord tells you to be out by the end of the month. They happen when you are expecting that job promotion only to find yourself being let go. James says trials are varied and happen unexpectedly, like when you receive that call from the doctor that your loved one, their health has taken a turn for the worse. Or when you are increasingly seen in the workplace or on the college campus as intolerant because of your Christian belief. Trials may happen unexpectedly when you get home one evening and your spouse informs you that they are calling it quits on you or your marriage. It happened unexpectedly. You see, brothers and sisters, oftentimes we have no choice or control over our trials. But the question remains, what are your response going to be? The right response, James says, is to consider it pure joy. Consider it pure joy. But what does it mean to consider it pure joy whenever you are facing trials? Is James saying that when trials come our way, we should act happy? Putting on a fake smile like that of the Joker? Is he maybe saying that we need to fake it until we make it? Well, it's worth noting that the word to consider is a command from James. And to consider means that you are consciously thinking and calculating something. In this case, James is urging his readers to consciously think and commit to face trials with joy. Now, oftentimes, our first response to trials may be negative and emotional, but James says, think. Think what, James? And how is this even possible? Well, at first glance, this command of James sounds rather insensitive, doesn't it? Consider it pure joy. We can say, surely, James, you don't know my trials. You don't know what I'm going through. And that may be true. James may not have known then the exact trial you or I are going through or will go through. Although James may not have known this, what James did know was something else. He did know something about our trials and about our sufferings, and he says that you too know it. And what we know is the fact that trials or our life circumstances have a purpose. James says in verse 3, "For you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." James says that you are in the know. Although you may be deemed by the world or perceived by outsiders as an outsider because of your faith in Jesus, he says, nevertheless, you have insider knowledge. Sure, you may not know why some trials are happening now. Sure, we may not know how long some trials will last. But what you do know, James says, is that there is a purpose in your trials. And if there's a purpose in your trials, it means that those trials are being steered and directed in such a way so as to achieve that purpose. And this is what we as Christians know. We know that God works in all things together for good. Romans 8 verse 28. And this is why it's so dangerous and evil to succumb to the whole health and wealth prosperity teaching that claim that your personal and temporal circumstances are a sign of either God's displeasure or of God's favor. That's not what the Bible teaches, brothers and sisters. Now, the Bible does teach that, and James tells us this morning, that God is at work even in our trials, even when it doesn't look so good. And knowing all this, James says, serves as the reason, it serves as the basis for why we can consider it pure joy when we face our trials. I want to notice again the purpose. Verse 3, it says, "For you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance or steadfastness or endurance." It is said that one of the top reasons why people sort of quit the gym is because they don't see results. Oftentimes, the majority of these individuals would quit within or just after 3 months, not knowing that the real change and the lasting change actually happens around month 5 and month 6. If only they would have stayed at it for a little longer, they would have seen results. In one sense, you can't blame them for not persevering, because we are living in a world that is so fast-paced, where time is not measured in minutes anymore, or hours, or weeks, or days, or months, or years, but is measured in kilobytes per second. That's the speed of our internet connection. Everything is fast-paced. And this fast-paced life, it rubs off on us. Have you maybe noticed how people are more and more becoming impatient? Impatient and instant. We opt in and we opt out, not only of our newsletters and of our emails, but we also opt in and out of our relationships and even opt in and out of church. Sadly, this instant culture is producing an instant and impatient faith within people. And James says we need a bit of endurance. In fact, the word translated endurance here in verse 3 can also be rendered staying power. Staying power means having the ability to hold up under stress, to hold up under the difficult circumstances of life. Staying power. It means that in our trials we are not trying to be instant, but rather incessant. It means that in our trials, we're not looking for a way out to avoid it or to get out from under it. Rather, we try to go through it. Endurance or steadfastness means that we allow our faith in God to be tested by trials. And the more it proves to be genuine in our trials, the more it produces endurance. James is saying, and I'm paraphrasing, if you want to build some spiritual muscles, some faith muscles, muscles that will hold up under the difficult circumstances of life, then don't quit on God's spiritual gym. Stay at it. And this is hard. It's hard and it's difficult. But James says it's beautiful and it's rewarding. Stay at it. But notice that as wonderful as this endurance that it produces, that is not the ultimate goal, James says. Look with me at verse 4. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Let steadfastness have its full effect. I like how the King James Version says it. It says, but let. And there, that little word but, it indicates a contrast. You say to your spouse, I'm going to do the dishes, but not now, later. The Springboks won the game yesterday, but the Wallabies didn't show up. The testing of your faith produces endurance, but maybe you can help me out. What is normally written on the label in bold on antibiotics? What is normally written on there? Finish the course. Finish the course, James says. But let endurance finish its course, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. By this, James means to be complete and to be perfect, lacking in nothing. He says it's a person that is whole, a person that is completely sound in mind and in body and in soul. And I think you would agree with me that if we must go without sleep for a few days, we would soon realize that we are not so perfect. We are not sound. We are not whole in every way. Instead, we would go through life and we would see that we lack love. We lack joy. We lack peace and kindness. We lack goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. And we do not know when the end of this process of perfection will be, because we do lack imperfection. And most likely the end will only be when Christ returns again. What this text does tell us, though, is that God will not stop working until he has a finished product. And for some, that might be good news. And for others, maybe not. Because that means that trials will be around for some time with us. But James says, don't short-circuit the process. And I don't think James is downplaying how hard things will be. And neither am I trying to do that. It can be harder oftentimes when we don't see any progress at all. Instead, what we see is a going backwards, as if we are playing a game of snakes and ladders. We might even lose heart at some times. But you see, when we, or where we are many times unable to humbly and obediently preserve under our trials, while that might be true of us, there was one who perfectly stayed the course. He stayed the course under the greatest amount of trial ever imaginable to man. He is said to have endured the cross and instead look beyond the cross, look beyond the trial to the joy that was set before him. You see, while Jesus was perfect in every way, he nevertheless humbled himself by willingly giving himself up, so that at the end we would lack nothing necessary to stand before God, the judge of all. And Christ did this for us, becoming obedient to death on a cross. And it was there on the cross where God's plan for humanity and for all of creation seemed most hidden and absent and backward, perhaps much like the trials that we are going through. We do not see God's hand in them. We do not know how God is working them together for our good. But know that at the cross, it was there that God was most present and most active and most victorious. And this is the hope we have in our trials. Not so much that we will have a perfect ending, but rather the hope in our trials is the fact that we have a perfect Savior, and his name is Jesus. Let's pray.